New merch is here. Check it out in the description down below and enjoy the video. Welcome to a new way to play Destiny that will have you eager to log on and put to use right after you get done watching this video. With stylish gameplay, rapid fire one-shots, massive damage bonuses, and borderline invincibility, this is a setup that runs the show solo and absolutely dunks on everything when you run it with friends. And with myself entering that time of the year where I want to rewatch the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, extended editions of course, there is no better time for you to gear up with me with this Legolas-style Elven Archer build. I know you might be skeptical of a bow-based build, but just trust me when I say that 5 minutes of using this in-game will have you falling in love with a new way to play Destiny. So hit those like and subscribe buttons down below if you are a Lord of the Rings bow fan just like me, and let's get started. Thanks to Enlisted for sponsoring this video, a free-to-play World War II multiplayer shooter with a strong focus on historical authenticity coupled with dynamic gameplay to always keep players in the middle of action. Enlisted features a whole lot to love, like large-scale combat and historical campaigns that you can enjoy with friends through things like Enlisted Squads mode and cross-platform support, so you can play with anyone from anywhere. But perhaps my favorite thing about Enlisted is the hundreds of firearms and specialized weapons that it features, from common weapons seen throughout World War II to various trial and prototype weapons that are rarely showcased in other games. And what's even better is that you can register using my link in the description to play for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox, and get a free bonus in the process in the form of 3 days of premium time and several orders for troops and weapons. Thanks to Enlisted for sponsoring the video. Now let's build. As we alluded to in the intro, this build begins with bows, and while there are 3 specific bows that I will highly recommend to you later in this video, I first want to begin with the exotic armor pieces that will juice up any and all of them, the Oathkeeper's exotic gloves. The Oathkeepers have 2 primary components, a passive one and an active one, the first of which is a perpetual buff that passively grants 40 airborne effectiveness and a bonus 10 points to your draw time stat to all bows. To put that into perspective, these buffs result in effectively perfect in-air accuracy and an extra draw time masterwork. On the other side of the gloves is the active buff, Adamantine Brace, which not only allows perfect draws to be held indefinitely, but also provides a ramping damage buff the longer they are held, specifically granting a 37.5% damage increase every 0.5 seconds up to a 150% total damage buff increase. And while it's not always worthwhile to hold your arrow draws to max out this damage buff, namely in situations where you can safely spam arrows, this charged arrow option is fantastic for being able to load up an arrow behind cover that you can unleash to stagger a tankier target, catch an enemy off guard with a large chunk of damage, or use to instantly one-shot a barrier champion shield with just one legendary bow arrow. And these gloves alone allow you to be an absolute aerial psychopath with bow combat in ways that are completely exclusive to the Hunter class. The main reason for this is that in addition to these huge damage buffs and airborne effectiveness accuracy buffs, the Hunter class jump is the only boost jump in Destiny that will not reset a drawn arrow. The result is an extremely airborne aerial assassin that can rain down bow fire on any set of unlucky and unsuspecting targets. Remember, high ground is OP, and with this build, everywhere is high ground. With all of that in mind, let's get to the rest of our kit that will continue to strengthen this unique bouncy bow playstyle, beginning with our first aspect, On Your Mark, a 3 fragment slot aspect that grants a stacking weapon handling and reload speed increase buff on precision final blows, with an activation of your dodge immediately giving you the maximum 3 stacks. Simply put, this aspect will have you firing your bow so fast that your fingers will literally get tired. Next up is Knock 'em Down, a 2 fragment slot aspect that significantly increases the projectile count and damage of our Blade Barrage super, and most importantly, refunds our knife trick melee ability in full when getting final blows with it while in possession of the Radiant buff. And this is extremely beneficial, especially when considering the first fragment that we'll be utilizing, the Ember of Torches, which of course grants the radiant buff to yourself and all nearby allies when striking an enemy with your powered melee ability. The result of pairing this fragment with the knock 'em down aspect is a method to infinitely possess the 25% weapon damage increase radiant buff, further strengthening our bow rampage capabilities. The next core fragment of this build is the Ember of Singeing, which grants us a 300% bonus to class ability regeneration for 3 seconds when applying Scorch to enemies, which is incredibly convenient considering that our knife trick melee ability that makes us radiant and can be refunded infinitely also scorches enemies on impact. And this is perfect for our third fragment as well, the Ember of Searing, which grants melee ability energy and spawns a FIRESPRITE when killing scorched enemies, which will of course grant a chunk of grenade energy upon scavenging. For fragment slot number 4, you've got 2 options, where I recommend you prioritize the Ember of Benevolence for a 6-second 400% bonus to grenade, melee, and class ability regeneration anytime you apply Cure, Radiance, Restoration, Healing, or a Revive to any ally. A great synergy next to both the Ember of Torches' infinite melee throws to maintain a team-wide radiant buff, and the Healing Grenade to easily proc this fragment by applying Cure and Restoration to both ourselves and allies on demand. If, however, you are running some solo content and are unable to proc this fragment due to having no allies around, I would urge you towards the Ember of Beams for more accurate blade barrages instead. For our final fragment slot, we again have 2 options, where in the event you are rocking a solar bow, you'll want to prioritize the Ember of Empyrean, which extends the duration of your existing restoration and radiant buffs by 4 seconds for every solar weapon or ability final blow that you land. The main idea with this fragment is that you can use it to, in theory, have an everlasting restoration healing buff and radiant damage buff, so long as you continue to get solar weapon or ability kills. My favorite way to get the timers of these buffs ramped up is to first acquire Radiant through a powered melee hit thanks to the Ember of Torches, which lasts for an initial 8 seconds, and then throw my healing grenade on the ground in front of me as I get an enemy weak. Then, as I'm ready to kill the enemy I've weakened up, I'll move forward to collect my grenade to grant an initial restoration buff of 4 seconds, then release my arrow to immediately extend that timer up to 8 and give myself a longer buffer window to continue to keep that timer stacking. However, in the event that you are not running a solar weapon and can't take advantage of the Ember of Empyrean, I would instead urge you towards the Ember of Solace to increase your restoration and radiant buff timers by 50%. Now, before we move on to our armor mods for this build, let's talk weapons. And while literally any bow does work for this build, I have 3 that I have been struggling to put down whenever I decide to enter Archer mode. The first is any solar legendary bow thanks to their synergies with the Ember of Empyrean. Personally, I've been going with the brand new pre-Astyanax bow with Archer's Tempo and Precision Instrument, but really any solar bow with Archer's Tempo and a damage perk will suffice. Bow number 2 is the Wish Ender exotic bow, which is now much easier to obtain thanks to a new quest acquisition path and packs a massive punch against any tanky target while granting copious amounts of super energy in the process. Perfect for those of you that love ripping off blade barrage like there's no tomorrow. But if you want a cascading chain reaction of solar explosions on every other arrow release, then you can't go wrong with my personal favorite of the bunch, the Tigu's Divination. Not only is this bow an absolute beauty on its own, but it performs exceptionally well in team environments where others are also using it, thanks to the fact that you can theoretically have one player be designated to spam hip fires to mark all targets, while the other user is focused exclusively on fully drawn ADS shots to proc the solar explosions on all of the marked targets. And if you're looking for folks to team up with so you can do just that, consider teaming up with one of the thousands of super friendly buildcraft loving guardians through the LFG channel in my Discord server that you can join using the link in the description down below. Either way, I have even more Tiku's divination tips for you, should you choose to select it for your bow slot, that work for both solo and team play. The first is that in the event that you are using it as intended by alternating between hip fire and ADS shots to mark and proc targets respectively, remember that there is no point in ever fully drawing the bow for the hip fire pulls. It's much more efficient and nets much better DPS to simply tap the hip fire and fully draw the ADS shot, as opposed to fully drawing both. The other tip that I bet most of you might not know is that you can get really crafty with the hip fire angles of this bow to tag targets behind cover that otherwise can't be hit. In these situations, simply acquire the tracking diamond on the target by hopping or strafing to briefly get vision of them, and then yank your bow far up or to the side to create a boomerang-like angle that your arrow will follow, thus curving around cover to hit the enemy where it otherwise would have gone straight into whatever they were hiding behind. Do me a favor and consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons down below if you didn't know that before watching this build video. Now, while these are the 3 bows that I love for this setup, I was getting asked non-stop about a 4th option while testing this build in my live stream over at twitch.tv/Mactics live weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. That 4th option was the Hierarchy of Needs Solar Exotic Bow from the Spire of the Watcher dungeon. And while I'd love to provide insight on how this bow synergizes with this particular build, I can't, because I don't have it. So if you watching this do own the Hierarchy of Needs bow, feel free to give it a whirl and come back to this video to leave a comment down below and let me know how it feels. As for armor mods, we'll start things off on the helmet with a Siphon mod matching your bow element for Orb of Power Generation on bow multi-kills, along with 2 copies of Dynamo for a huge chunk of Blade Barrage energy when using your class ability near enemies. Moving down to the gloves, you'll want a Loader mod once again matching your bow element for even faster bow firing speeds, along with copies of Impact, Induction, and Focusing Strike for a refund to grenade and class ability energy respectively when dealing melee damage. Down on the chest, you'll simply want to slot in 3 resistance mods matching the element of whatever type of damage is being dealt by enemies in the activities you are playing, for increased durability to allow for safer close range gameplay. On the boots, you'll look to slot 2 copies of Elemental Surge, once again matching the element of your bow for a 17% weapon damage boost when armor charged, along with a copy of Innervation for some extra healing grenade energy on Orb of Power pickup. Finally, on the class item, you'll look to slot in Reaper for Orb of Power Generation on your next weapon final blow after class ability cast, a copy of Time Dilation for increased armor charge stack duration, and a copy of Bomber for grenade energy refund on class ability activation. Pair all of this with stat prioritizations of Resilience, Discipline, Mobility, and Intellect in that order, and you're ready to roll. And to get straight into the action, you can copy all of this with ease using the Mobalytics written guide or Destiny Item Manager links down in the description. Altogether, with the damage bonuses from Oathkeepers, Radiant, and Weapon Surge mods, you've got a build capable of a consistent 352% damage buff, paired with non-stop healing, highly agile movement, blade barrages by the dozen, and so much more. If that isn't worth hitting those like and subscribe buttons, then I don't know what is. Once again, I want to thank Enlisted for making this video possible, which you can once again experience in all of its glory for free on PC, Xbox, or PlayStation by signing up using my link down in the description below. I'll see you in the live stream. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.